Good morning. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Princeton, where in our open and welcoming community, we live our message of hope, love, justice, and joy. We extend a special welcome to our visitors this morning. We're really happy that you're here, and we hope you find us warm and welcoming. If you haven't already stopped by the newcomer table in Robinson Lounge, we invite you to do that so that we can add you to our e-list and invite you to all the different programs and events that we have coming up here at UU Princeton. A few announcements before we start this service. The first is that next Saturday, a week from yesterday, is the Princeton Pride Parade. The UU Princeton contingent will meet at 10 a.m. in the municipal parking lot just right over there. You can park here and walk there, but just remember you have to walk all the way back from downtown Princeton. So one way or the other, work out that transportation. They're meeting at 10 a.m. and then there'll be a booth from 12 to 4 at the Pride Parade area itself. So show up, dress up, have fun, represent UU Princeton with Rainbow Ministry. It'll be a great day here in Princeton. Also, when you get your coffee or tea after service today, please consider signing up to be a coffee volunteer every once in a while. We always need volunteers for coffee, but over the summer in particular, we really need volunteers. We need to make sure we have each week covered. So if you can sign up, please do, and know that you'll be making everyone feel more at home here on Sunday mornings, and that's a great gift to our visitors especially. And now let us be together for this hour to remember peace, to praise the good, to care for one another, and to grow in love. Come, let us worship together.
Many of us have been running all our lives. Practice stopping. Thich Nhat Hanh.
We're celebrating today. If life affords you the chance for a visit or a phone call, I hope the day gives you that opportunity. If the person you're thinking about lives in blessed memory, I hope the day affords you some time to remember them and think about them, maybe toast them, light a candle for them, and even more so to share those memories with someone in your life. If you are actively parenting, I hope the day affords you a nice celebration. And if, like me, your parenting is of younger ones and you sometimes feel a little overwhelmed, I hope the day affords you a nice nap. That has a way of fixing a lot of things. Our blessing this morning is by John O'Donohue. It's a piece titled Blessing for a New Father. Blessing for a New Father. As the shimmer of dawn transforms the night into a blush of color futured with delight, the eyes of your new child awaken in you a brightness that surprises your life. Since the first stir of its secret becoming, the echo of your child has lived inside you, strengthening through all its night of forming into a sure pulse of fostering music. How quietly and gently that embryo echo can womb in the bone of a man and foster across the distance to the mother a shadow shelter around this fragile voyage. Now, as you behold your infant, you know that this child has come from you and to you. You feel the full force of a father's desire to protect and shelter. Perhaps for the first time, there awakens in you a sense of your own mortality. May your heart rest in the grace of the gift, and you sense how you have been called inside the dream of this new destiny. May you be gentle and loving, clear and sure. May you trust in the unseen providence that has chosen you all to be a family. May you stand sure on your ground and know that every grace you need will unfold before you like all the mornings of your life. And here in the silence of this sacred space, we offer these, the prayers and meditations of our hearts. May it be so, and amen.
I am burnt out. It's very disappointing to admit that, but it's an unavoidable fact. The reason it's so disappointing is I left a job that I believed was the cause of my burnout, only to jump into an equally exhausting situation. I should preface this complaint by saying I'm extremely fortunate to love what I do. Most of you know I'm a professional musician. I play and teach violin for a living. What could be better than that, right? Well, my former job as a professor at Johns Hopkins had me going to Baltimore at least 3 days a week. And my job now, teaching privately from my home and at a community music school about an hour away, has me tied up in the evening hours I'd prefer to be spending with my family. I loved my professorship at Hopkins, but left because I didn't want to spend so much time traveling and being away from home. Unfortunately, I'm still traveling too much, this time to the community music school, and trying to fit in as many private students as possible in the evenings, much to the chagrin of my 7-year-old who views evenings as mommy time and feels I'm ignoring her. What she doesn't realize is I'm trying to equal the salary I made at Hopkins so we can continue to live the way we had been before I left that job. She doesn't understand that I'm adulting. Of course she doesn't. She's 7. Ralph Waldo Emerson very wisely said, "Money often costs too much." Prioritizing monetary gain over taking care of oneself, spiritually, mentally, and physically, can be extremely detrimental and unfulfilling. This is hitting home for me in myriad ways. I haven't been meditating or jogging on a regular basis. My back is a mess from so much driving, and I just feel generally stressed out all the time. Because of the stress, I'm having issues with anger and patience, 2 things that don't normally dog me, and which my family is finding a bit surprising. Especially sad for me is the fact that because of my schedule, I haven't been here to UUCP for 6 weeks. 6 weeks. This is my weekly sanctuary, the place I come to feel safe and held and loved, the place I come to breathe and be reminded that everything is, in fact, going to be okay. So here I am today, thank goodness. I'm taking a break. I'm breathing. I'm remembering what's important to me and feeling that joyous feeling of coming home. It's my weekly Sabbath. What I need to do for myself is take these feelings into my week. How can I have mini Sabbaths on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, etc.? How can I not ignore that daily reminder from my meditation app and sit my butt on that cushion and meditate? How can I temporarily ignore those emails from parents who want extra lessons for their kids before the summer begins and instead practice piano with my daughter? How can I not pay attention to that pile of laundry that needs to be folded and go for a walk with my husband instead? Like Thich Nhat Hanh suggested, I'm going to practice stopping. And when I falter, I'm going to begin again and again and again, if needs be. Wish me luck and happy Sabbath.
That was awesome. We had Mr. Rogers and Somewhere Over the Rainbow in this service. That's wonderful. That's awesome. Thank you, Sue. In the kind of yoga that I used to frequently practice, there's a posture where you stand on one leg, hold the other leg at the foot behind your back, extend your free arm toward the ceiling, lean forward, trying to get your chest horizontal to the ground and balance there, reaching forward, kicking up, and arching your back at the same time. There's another posture where you stand on one straight leg, bend over, grab your other foot from the bottom with both hands, and try to straighten your back while extending forward that bent leg that you're holding beneath the foot and still balancing on the other leg without falling over. There's a posture where you lay on your belly, grab your ankles from behind, tilt your head as far back as it will go, and kick your feet to the ceiling so that your head and feet form something like a U, like Unitarian or Universalist. You do this while your spine compresses. And there's one where you're still on your belly and you plant your palms into the ground below your waist, straighten your legs, and use your arms to lift your legs from the waist in the air as high as you can while your chin drives itself into what is by then a very, very sweaty yoga mat. I paid good money to take these classes. in a room made very hot and very humid for a very long time, and a rule that said you can't leave once class starts. I took hundreds of these classes and practiced these postures and many others thousands of times in order to build strength and balance in my life and to recover from a lingering knee injury. And they did make me stronger, and they did increase my sense of balance, and my knee was made better. It was money well spent. I've moved away from the practice and do other things for those benefits now, but it was great for me at the time. But as demanding as those postures were, they were not the most difficult ones that we learned. Physically, they looked like they would be, but the most difficult posture was one in which we didn't move around at all. We just stood still or laid still on the floor, not moving, just breathing. We would work in a posture, then rest, and then work, and then rest, and then work, and then rest. Again and again, cycle after cycle, we would extend and contort ourselves physically, trying to breathe through great exertions of effort, and then we would rest and try to breathe while doing nothing. And it was always harder to rest than it was to work. Sure, we could be mostly still, but we would be tempted to fidget with our hair or fix our shirt or stretch or do something to break the complete stillness and rest of that moment. Simply doing nothing was very difficult, and yet that was the goal of those postures that repeated again and again. Do not move, do not do anything. The instructor would repeat again and again, just rest, just rest. There's one task. There's no multi-anything. Just be still. Our minds would be filled with what we had to do after class or what we have to do next week or the work waiting for us at home or in the office. Even if one could be physically still, mentally stillness was much more difficult. Often at the end of those 30 seconds of trying to do nothing and empty our minds, we were eager for the impossible but clear demands of those postures again. Please give us something to do because rest is impossible. The Episcopal priest Barbara Brown Taylor may have been observing such a class when she wrote, "I know people who are capable of doing 5 things at once who are incapable of doing nothing." She writes about our tendency to fill each moment of each day with tasks and things because we fear that emptiness. We fill the space in which we live and avoid feeling the time in which we live. But while the space in which we live is good and useful, it's the time that is really holy. The space is where we do things. The time is where we can just be. The space is where we labor. The time is where we rest or where we keep the Sabbath. Abraham Joshua Heschel wrote the book on the Sabbath, helpfully titled The Sabbath. Heschel was a professor of ethics and mysticism at the Jewish Theological Seminary of America. He died in 1972. Referencing famous teaching rabbis throughout history, he writes about the first creation story in Genesis, the first one in the Hebrew scriptures. In that creation story, God creates for 6 days, making the earth and the heavens and day and night. God creates the sky and waters and separates them. God creates dry land and plants and the stars and the moon and the sun. God creates sea animals and air animals and land animals and humans and tells us that we can eat the plants. It takes 6 days to create all these things, these objects, these living and inanimate bodies and items that exist in the space that God has also created. And translations of the stories differ, but in one way or another, they all say that God was happy with these creations. Like an artist who likes her own painting, God finds satisfaction in the stuff of creation. Sometimes the words are about something being created and God says it is good, or sometimes the words are God was pleased with something that was created. Regardless, God is creating a way for 6 days and is happy with the results. And the 7th day comes and God rests, and that day, that time is declared holy. Nothing had been declared holy up to that point. Things were good, but have not reached that higher point of holiness. And then when God rests, God blesses that day and considers it holy. Creation has begun and God is happy, but what is holy is that time. Heschel says this is because Sabbath is spirit in the form of time, and that spirit is holy. And remember, this is the first full day of humans being on the earth. In the story, we are created on day 6, and then day 7 is one of rest. The first command we are to observe is to rest, even though at that point we haven't really done anything. Everything was provided for us. We were still in Eden. The late Rachel Held Evans wrote that this meant that Sabbath was never meant to be our end. It was and is our beginning, infused with God's steadfast love as expressed through God's grace of time. She's saying that Sabbath is where we start, not end. We begin in rest, not in work. The practice isn't to cram a little Sabbath into busy lives, but to practice Sabbath as the first holy gift, as a priority, as a way of setting ourselves for the work of the world that is to come. One must labor to live in this world, and one must rest to experience holy time. To live in this world is to be of its space and among its things and beings. It's to be in relationship with other people and all life, and to depend upon forces much larger than ourselves for our existence. To live in this world is to shape this world, to cultivate crops and build homes and raise the young, and to love and to befriend, and to serve and to use and harness nature's power to extend and advance life. To live in this world is to labor in the goodness of creation for 6 days, honoring that goodness by living ethically among the things and beings in the space of our shared world. And to experience holiness is to step away from the space and center ourselves in the time, to observe the holy Sabbath by resting, by not doing anything that forms or reforms the space in which we live, which allows us to be more present in the holy moments of Sabbath time. Heschel writes, the higher goal of spiritual living is not to amass a wealth of information, but to face sacred moments. Sabbath cultivates space for those moments, not by restricting them to the hours of rest, but by shifting our relationship with rest, such that those moments might sneak in and surprise us even when we're not in Sabbath. A Sabbath moment makes our non-Sabbath hours ever more open to the possibilities of awe and peace and connection. We are blessed by the peace of Sabbath, even with the moments of that command have passed. This has something to do with embracing an emptiness that can lead to a kind of fullness, or embracing a spaciousness in life that allows room to be and breathe and create. Just as a cup filled beyond the top makes a mess that someone has to clean up, so too will a person overbusy spill over and make a mess for themselves, or most often their loved ones. We've all lost it on people we love because we're too busy to think straight, too stressed, too fractured and frantic, we're doing too much. We've all overfunctioned in times like these, and we've all even resented those who are not, who are at peace and living more balanced lives. They can annoy us to no end when we're overfunctioning. We've all pressed or wished our anxieties upon others, looking at the open space of rest in the life of someone else and wishing to fill it as we've overfilled ours. Sabbath makes a very clear judgment here. Some emptiness, some space, some rest is not only good, it's holy. It's of God, which is of love, which is the primary force of creation. Yet we are cultured to believe that we should produce in such a manner that the cup is always full, even to overflowing. A minute of nothing is a wasted minute. An hour at rest is an hour without production. A day of nothing accomplishes nothing. What's more, why do only one thing when it is possible to do many at once? There are times when I will have 2 screens going on emails, one looking things up, my phone near me so I can keep up with an active text thread, a book open in my lap while I try to find this thing I once read a few years ago, and a stack of sticky notes so that I won't forget any of these fractured thoughts that are overfilling those moments. I've learned that nothing really gets done in those moments, at least nothing worth remembering. It's better to pick one thing and do that, and then do something else, and then something else, even if it's in rapid succession. What's done will be done more completely, with less anxiety and with much greater focus. And there'll be a little more space to breathe and be while the days and its needs march on. Sabbath reminds us in this way that we are not here to produce. We are not market forces or creators or servants. Though much of life demands our attention to these realms, our worth and value are set by that which is holy, that which flowed into us in the larger span of creation and built us and the trees and the mountains and the streams. Our worth is not measured by any figure. Rather, it's graced by the same creative spark that brings butterfly and bison and chipmunk and cheetah to life. And like them, we are valued not for what we produce, but for the life that flows through us. The tides, the waves, the surge and pull of the waters are majestic and beautiful, powerful and terrible, healing and peaceful, none of that being a market force. All of that holy and good and part of the same great web that houses us. So much of the lives of the ancients who developed this sense of Sabbath and wrote it into their holy books and built it into their holy commandments was centered on this notion that their worth was not determined by how much they could do, how much they produced, all the goods they could acquire for themselves and for Pharaoh. That's even what the market told them, and yet they knew something wasn't right about that. They knew they had a worth beyond production, a worth of being, a worth that was of grace and holiness. And to remember that, they built a practice of Sabbath in which once a week they would not serve the market, not Pharaoh, not company. Rather, they would rest as they imagined they were first commanded to do right after they were created. In that, they would remember that time was holy, that life was sacred, and that the time we have to live it is so precious. So too is our challenge today to remember that core teaching of Sabbath. That command sings today of a worth that we all have that has nothing to do with what we produce. It sings of our original connection to the holy and of how that presence is still in our lives in time as spirit. It teaches us that some empty space, some open space, some time of doing nothing is healthy and healing, even if it's a bit unsettling at first. For the truth is that if it were easy to practice Sabbath, everyone would do it. And it probably wouldn't be an ancient commandment that had lasted through the ages if it came easy. Its value for us today is partly due to its difficulty, just as it was for the ancient ones. For we too can be ruled by a sense that all space needs to be filled, that all time needs to be used productively, that rest is for the weak. These false teachings can come from others as prompts to do more in order to be of value, and they can come from within when we pressure ourselves and build our own self-image around accomplishment and how many things we can juggle at once. And in the former false teachings, we only find that we're utterly replaceable by the market every single time. And with the latter, we only find that we become exhausted and dispirited and sometimes end up pressing our inflictions upon those who love us, not for what we do, but for who we are. Those who love us as friends and family, who love not our doings, but our beings. In the face of these old and always new pressures, this ever-present plot in the human narrative, we can command ourselves and urge one another in ways that make sense today to rest, to renew, to recharge, and not only when we're already exhausted, but sometimes right at the beginning, to start with rest so that we live with spirit and balance and goodwill, to embrace some emptiness in time so that the unplanned may spark into being, to remember Sabbath, so that we know we belong to love, and through the rest of life, that assurance can bring us a little peace, no matter how busy and stressful the days are. Just like the yoga class, we rest, we work, we rest, we work, a cycle in which each depends on the other. We find peace in the rest and growth in the work, and over time, each grows into the other, so that they move as one in the holy space of time, in the holy span of our lives. May it be so, and amen. And at the end of our hour, we extinguish our chalice, knowing that its light stays with us until we gather again. Go forth grateful for the moments before you, the breath within you, the people among you, and the Spirit guiding you toward lives of love and kindness. And go forth knowing that you are held always and always with everyone else by that great love of no beginning and never ending. Go in peace, and amen.